Hey, so a few months ago I did a review on a 2000 watt power station here. This one is the E2000LFP from Pecron, and I'll put a link to that video up there if you want to go check it out. But this remains to date one of my favorite 2000 watt power stations for a variety of reasons, and it also has a capacity of just about 2000 watt hours. Now, at the time they released this, they also sort of teased the eventual availability of an expansion battery for this called the EB3000. With a 3000 watt hour capacity. And guess what? I finally got my hands on one. So this thing just arrived today. I really haven't had a chance to work with it yet, but we're going to find out if it's worth a look. All right, this EB3000 comes with another really nice cable and accessory bag. It's kind of a semi-rigid case. Let's find out what's inside, because it certainly feels like there is a lot in there. And I haven't really had a chance to go through it yet. So let's see. Well, first of all, we've got our user manual. And by the way, I think the standard warranty on these Pecron devices is 1 year. But if you register it on their website, then you get the extra year. So it's basically a 2-year warranty, but you do have to remember to register it. So please do that. All right, so what do you get in the box here? So right out of the gate, I kind of was not expecting this. So a couple of alligator clips to an XT60 connector. So I believe what this will allow you to do is to charge a car battery or a lithium-ion battery, if you have one that's 12 volt, directly from this unit, because this EB3000 can be used independently from the E2000LFP. Now it'll output DC, it won't output AC because it does not have an inverter, but it does have an MPPT charge controller. So not only can you output DC, and it has a Type C port that is a PD100, and it has a Type A port, and I'll give you close-ups of all this, that is an 18 watt Type A port. It's also got this XT60 30 amp output port. So that's what this is for. So you can charge another battery directly from this using the alligator clip. So that's very cool. I'm really kind of jazzed that they included that. Well, this is very interesting too. This is super cool. So this is another accessory cable that appears to be an XT60 on it again. So it'll plug right into here. And that has got a standard car 12 volt car socket on it and a female DC 5521, I believe. You could power a car fridge directly from this, or any other 12 volt appliance or device. Could be an electric blanket, could be whatever, including a DC 5521, right off of the EB3000, independent of the E2000. So again, very cool. Let's see what else they've got in here. So standard car charger. This has that that kind of 5-pin aviation style to a 12 volt charger, so it'll allow you to charge this right from your car if you want. And man, they've got just a variety of things. So they've got another, this is a charge cable. So this would be allowing you to charge with a DC 5521 or maybe a 25, I'll have to confirm that, but to the solar charge input. So you can, as I mentioned, charge this independently. And here again is another way to charge this thing using an Anderson connector. And then finally, it's got the 5-pin charge connector to MC4s, so your standard solar connector. And then the last cable they have in here is this beefy guy. This is the connector cable that allows you to connect it to the E2000LFP. All right, so that's about all I think I can get into right now. I need to go test this thing, find out what the usable combined capacity is between these two units. Should be somewhere south of about 5,000 watt hours. It's not going to be the full 5,000 watt hours, but we'll see how close to that we can get. And yeah, let's see how all that works out. I'll see you in about 2 seconds. And we're back. All right, so let's get into some specs, talk about pricing, and then we're going to take a look at some testing. I'm also going to show you some important configuration that you have to do on this, and more about that in just a minute. So pricing, if you were to buy these two together, the price is $27.99 right now. And by the way, I'll put links to these in the description below. I don't know if there's going to be a discount code yet at the time that I'm filming this, but if there is, I will put it in the description below and you can go check that out and find out how to get the best price. But as I said, if you buy the combo, it's $27.99. If you already have the E2000LFP, and you just want the EB3000, that is currently $14.99 on Amazon. And again, check the description below to see if I've got any discount codes for you that would lower that price. All right, let's get into some of the other specs. So the weight of the EB3000 by itself is about 57 pounds. So it is not light, but it is, we're talking 3,000 watt hours. So it's going to be heavy. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but both of these are lithium iron phosphate chemistry, and they're both rated to retain at least 80% of their original capacity for up to 3,500 full charge and discharge cycles. Now, Pecron will allow you to add up to 2 of these EB3000s, giving you over 8 kilowatts or 8,000 watt hours of battery capacity if you add 2 of these EB3000s to a single E2000 here. And real quick, let me just show you how you would connect the batteries. All right, so you'll notice that there are 2 ports on the EB3000. There's the one marked port 1 and the one marked port 2. You always want to connect port 1 directly to the E2000LFP. And if you're going to connect a second EB3000, that would connect to port 2. So the EB3000 that connects directly to the E2000 needs to be connected to the one marked port 1. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, one of the things that really kind of excites me about this product is the fact that you can use the EB3000 independently of the E2000. In fact, you can even charge it via solar. This will take up to 400 watts of solar by itself, independent of the 1,200 watts that you can charge on the E2000. Now, you can't use both inputs together as far as I'm aware of. If you have it connected to the E2000, you should use the inputs here on the E2000 for solar input. And if you are charging by solar, both units connected together, you can do that in basically 1 full day of pretty decent sun if you're maxing out that 1,200 watts of solar. And one way to estimate that, in case you're wondering, is that for every 100 watts of solar input, that should give you roughly, a rough estimate of about 500 watt hours of capacity production from that solar panel in a normal day of sun on average. You can get more than that. Sometimes it can obviously be less. But the implication of that also is if you were just going to charge the EB3000 by itself with the max of 400 watts input, that is probably going to take you a little more than 1 full day of sun, maybe a day and plus a couple of hours the next day to fully charge this thing from 0 to 100%, just because if you do the math, 400 watts times 5 or 500 watts is going to give you about 2,000 watt hours of input production from 400 watts. And that is not quite enough to, that's about 50% shy to charge this thing from 0 to 100%. But do keep that in mind. I think most people would probably opt to charge both units combined through the MPPT charge controller on the E2000 because it's just easier and you can throw more solar at it if you need to. Now, the BMS inside the EB3000 does offer all of the usual protections, so high temp, low temp, overload, low voltage protection, short circuit protection, overcurrent protection, kind of all of the things you would normally expect to find. All right, let's talk about some of the testing I did on this, and let's then get into the configuration after that. So in terms of testing, I did do a discharge test on the combined output of both units with them connected together. And you can see here that I was able to get a usable capacity out of the combined output of both units at 4,634 watt hours, which equates to roughly 93% of the rated output of the batteries, which is really outstanding. The average that on these power stations that I test is usually around about 85%. So one of the cool features that I really like about this EB3000 is the ability to run DC outputs completely independent of the E2000 main unit. So not only do they give you the USBs, but they have this XT60 out, and they provide this auxiliary cable that has a standard 12-volt car socket on it. And it also has a basically a port for a DC 5521 cable. So I've got it connected to my battery tester here. So I'm going to let this thing run, and we're going to see how long or how much capacity usable we get out of the DC just with this thing by itself. We'll check in when it's done. All right, it is done. As you can see, we got 2,707 watt hours. Took about 15 hours. That is 222.64 amp hours if you're keeping track. Now, in terms of AC charging, if you're charging both of these together from 0 to 100% using just the one AC adapter that comes with the E2000, that's going to take approximately 9 hours to charge this thing from 0 to 100%. Now, you can add a second charger Pecron does sell those independently, and you can actually connect 2 of those to cut that charge time in half. Now, I think it's important that I kind of show you how the configuration works on this, because I think there is some confusion about that, and I think Pecron did this to themselves. Because if you were to look at the manual that comes with the unit, this manual doesn't properly show you how to connect and configure the units to properly show state of charge in the main unit. So to find out how to do that, you actually have to go to Pecron's website. I think it's under the support heading. You can download an updated copy of the manual, the user manual for the EB3000, and it shows you how to make that connection. And there is some confusion about that because it's not the most elegantly seamless interface. There's a little bit of a hidden menu system in here. So let's take a look and see how that works. Right, so I'm going to show you how to calibrate your E2000 so that the state of charge properly shows the combined state of charge of both the E2000 and an attached EB3000. So by default, it's only going to show you 100% based on the capacity of the E2000. So we have to access a hidden menu. And there are 2 methods that you may have to follow, one or the other, depending on the firmware version of your particular E2000. So the first method, which will not work on my particular unit, tells you to power the unit off. And then from there, you press and hold the DC button for 7 seconds. And what should happen if this were going to work is that the menu should start flashing with the options. And you can see nothing really happens here. So on my particular unit, I have to go to solution number 2, which is basically to press and hold AC and DC until that flashes, and then double click the AC button. Now I'm in the hidden menu. Now in this particular solution or method for this particular firmware, I'm only interested in modifying really parameter number 4. Parameters number 5 and 6 may be of interest to you. If you have the earlier firmware, that would equate to parameters 1, 2, and 3. So I'll kind of point that out as we go. So we don't really want to change anything here. We're going to go ahead and go to parameter 4. So I'm going to long press AC until I get to parameter 4. And you can see here it says 1920 watts. So I want this to reflect the combined capacity of both units, which would be 4,992. Now, if you have 2 expansion batteries, you're going to want that to be 8,064 watt hours. But in my case, it's 4992. So I need to change this digit here. So I'm going to increment that to 2. Then I'm going to go over to the next digit, which should be a 9. And then go to the next digit. That doesn't need to change. Then this one will be 4,992. And when I'm done, I long press AC, and that takes me to this menu. Now this actually allows you to, if you want to mess with this, this allows you to adjust the brightness. Right? So very low brightness. Really, these LED screens take up so little power, I don't see why you wouldn't want to just leave it on level 3 all the time. So that's where I leave it. Now, parameter 6, or in this case, if you have the other menu system parameter, it'll be parameter 3. This equates to, you see the H there, 4 hours. So this is a timeout value that I can set. So if there's no load on the AC and DC circuits, it's the timeout that the unit will go into sleep mode to preserve battery life. So that, for example, the AC inverter doesn't continue to leach power or battery capacity away from you when it's not being used. I've got mine set to 4 hours. If you want to turn that off completely, you can totally do that. You just take it down to off. Or you can set the timeout at 1 hour or anything up to, I believe, 6 hours. Yeah, so 6 is the top. I usually leave mine at 4, but then when I'm done, I long press AC, and you'll get a confirmation here. Actually, parameter 7 in this case. I don't want to change that. And when I see EEP, and it goes back to the main menu, my settings have been saved. Now, if you're on the other firmware, instead of EEP, you will see SUC for succeed. But that's basically how the menu system works and how to get to it. And if you were to go look at the Amazon rating on this, I think at the time I'm doing the video, I think it's maybe 3.5 stars. And that's all because there's only like 3 reviews, and one guy gave it a single star because he couldn't figure out how to do the configuration. So hopefully you agree with me that that really wasn't that bad. You just got to make sure that you download the manual online rather than relying on the manual that it comes with. But let's talk about some of my final thoughts on this. I really do remain very enthusiastic about this EB3000 unit because the E2000 really is one of my absolute favorites in the 2000 watt range. And when you add 3000 watt hours to it, that resulting 5000 watt hours combined actually makes this a very viable solution for emergency home backup power, to keep your refrigerator running or to keep your furnace going, something like that. So very handy for that kind of use case. Now, as I mentioned before, I really do love the fact that this EB3000 can be used independent of the E2000 with its DC output ports. And the fact that they engineered in this XT60 connector that's got 30 amp output on it for accessories, and then gave you a ton of accessory cables for this to allow you to use it in a variety of ways, I think is outstanding. But all of that really adds up to me thinking that this really is a very good solution in terms of portable power, and then expanding it to be in a very viable and functional home emergency power backup option. So I have no reservations about recommending this configuration, and I think if you're in the market for something like this for home backup power or emergency power, and you want something more than 2000 watt hour capacity, this is a fantastic option, and I think you really should check it out. So hopefully you found some of this information useful. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. Consider subscribing if this is the kind of content you're looking for. I'll be providing more of this kind of thing soon. I've got actually a couple very cool power stations coming up and a solar panel or two right in the queue. And I do hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun out there.